Hey, hello everyone. It's that time again. This is Dr. Joseph Capps and releasing another podcast and video today for Dancing with the Darkness. If you're new to the podcast or new to the channel, Dancing with the Darkness is literally a very personal, raw account of living with PTSD and CPTSD in particular, and using my life experiences and how I got from a very dark place into a better place. But also the fact that the connotation of dancing with the darkness is still very, very real, and that literally daily it is a struggle, but at the same time, it's also a way for us to turn all of our negative experiences into something very positive to help others and to heal and be redeemed. Do us a favor. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the podcast audibly on Podbean or Spotify. And simply, this just helps us with algorithms and all of this other stuff that I have no idea how it works. But the point is, we're trying to reach a larger audience and trying to help anyone we can. Many folks, like myself, I did for years, I did not seek help. I did not trust anyone to seek help. And so at the time, I kind of wished that there would have been something like this out there. And that's why I developed this podcast is hopefully you're going to identify, you're going to understand intimately what I'm talking about because you experience it. And the end game here is for you to not only to not feel alone anymore, but also to equip you with some tools for your toolbox to be able to cope with the many layers of that toxic onion of CPTSD that affects our lives, whether it be relationships. Here lately, we've been talking a lot about emotional flashbacks because that's such a huge part. But that's why we're here. So please do us a favor, like and subscribe. If this speaks to you, please like and comment as well so we know that we're doing the good work. So today we're going to continue on. We had mentioned at the beginning of this series about emotional flashbacks that it's going to be several videos. Today we're going to finish up the emotional flashback, the bulk of it series, by giving you some final tools for your toolbox. All of the tools that we've given you to deal with emotional flashbacks are very tangible. It's something that anyone can do. You don't have to pay for hours of therapy or read self-help books or do all of the things that I've done to be able to use these tactics and deploy these tools immediately. So we're just trying to get you some relief as you start your healing journey, or if you're within your healing journey now, to be able to cope with these things when they pop up, because it's never a convenient time. It's never anything that we're prepared for. And they're just nasty little things that really screw with our lives and screw with every part of our lives. So today I want to talk about something that we've been very, very sketch and very, very spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks kind of approach with this. And I want to fine tune a little bit. And today I want to talk about the difference between internal and external triggers or re-experiences, as I call them. So we've been talking about a lot about the external stuff, whether it be, the last video we talked about that look of contempt and how powerful it is. We've talked about external things that can get us into an emotional flashback. I want to talk about something today that many may not realize. I know that I didn't realize it for many, many years, that a lot of our emotional flashbacks actually are internal. And these emotional flashbacks are actually something that's manifested from the inside out. And usually it's based on a very, very toxic inner critic. And so with CPTSD, the reason why we call it complex is because it's polytrauma, it's developmental trauma. And so there's a lot of nasty little bags of tricks in here. Okay, not only have we grown psychologically, physically, and spiritually in a toxic environment. There's even sometimes a genetic component there. Usually there is, because it's a chain of abuse or a toxic family curse that goes on and on and on. And so we come out of the womb and we're already predisposed to anxiety, depression, all the way down to our genetic code. Okay, and so we need to understand that we're going into our life and developing through a series of some pretty severe challenges. One of the most profound things that I ever saw was when they started doing SPECT imaging, probably within the past 15, 20 years. I can't remember when I first saw it, but they literally were showing SPECT imaging, or the brain in color. And they showed, based on MRIs and SPECT imaging, that a young child that was in an abusive household, their brain looked exactly like a special forces or an operator that had come back from some really, really bad war with severe PTSD. So we're looking at the brain of a child already having all of the hot zones and the shrinking hypothalamus and the amygdala and all of these things at an early age, based on chronic and constant stress and trauma and abuse. And so this is very profound, because we need to understand with CPTSD that, especially when there's an emotional abuse or a verbal abuse, we develop this inner critic. And so, I used to imagine my parents living inside my head, even when my mother passed away when I was 9 years old. I still, and we're going to talk about this today, I had night terrors, I had nightmares. It was awful. And it just went on and on and on until I was able to manifest something in my subconscious to counteract the terrors. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But I want to talk about how this inner critic develops. It develops based on that. And so we go into adulthood, and we literally are still hearing that inner critic. Even when people give us compliments, or they edify us, or they validate us, we still we have a very difficult time even feeling that that's real. It's they call it cognitive emotive dissonance, or that unhealthy butterfly kind of nervousness in your gut. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel comfortable, and it's because we just can't accept it. We can't accept anything positive. We can call that the negative filter. There's all these cognitive behavioral therapy terms that are out there. But basically, we are discounting the positive, and we can't accept it. It becomes very uncomfortable. So it's a push-pull, because we desperately want that affirmation. We desperately want those words of affirmation, or that validation, or sense of belonging. But then when we get it, we can't even be comfortable, and we can't even accept it. It's just not believable, because we've been conditioned for so many years that you're an idiot, you're worthless, you're what was it? If you had a brain, you'd be dangerous. I mean, I'm just thinking of all of the horrible negative things I was told when I was a kid. I would try to get my father's attention, and he would tell me to go play on Highway 64. Some of it may have been just in jest, but as a child, these things get to you. Okay, they get to you, and it's a deep scar. And then you go into the world, and people are cruel to you, and it cascades all the way from school, getting bullied, to whatever, and it just goes on and on and on. And so we develop this terrible, toxic inner critic. And so what happens is, sometimes this thing can activate itself out of the blue. You may be doing a task, you may be doing something, and all of a sudden you're just overwhelmed with this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn reaction, and you're feeling all of the feels and all of the physicality that goes with it, because all of a sudden your own anxiety has manifested this terrible inner critic or internal emotional flashback, and it can be debilitating. It's it can keep us from being able to focus on what we're trying to do. It can actually cause the failure that we're trying to not actively do. Okay, so the failure that we're already, or the preconceived notion that we're going to fail, can actually manifest itself because we literally can sabotage what we're trying to do. And we'll call this, Peter Weller wrote a great book. If you guys want to read a really good book about complex PTSD, he wrote a great book. And he talks about what's called negative noticing, which I think is just a great term. It's basically a preconceived or constant, it's just a constant preconception that there's defects and hazards within us. Okay, so it's all that we see are these defects or these hazards in our life, and we just dwell on that. It becomes instinctual. It's almost like it's just a go-to reflex thought. We've talked about reflex thoughts before, but I'll go over that again. Basically, it's kind of like when you go to the doctor when you're a kid. They used to hit your knee and your leg would pop up. It was an automatic reflex, and you could concentrate all you wanted to, and you're not going to keep your leg from moving. It's automatic, okay? And so we get this with this toxic inner critic based on our developmental trauma. We get this thing in our mind that it's an automatic reflex thought. No matter what we do, it's negative. There's something wrong with me. I'm defective. There's all of these hazards. There's all of these pitfalls that are in the way of my success. And it's just hopeless. It's inconceivable that I can succeed or do anything to be successful at this time, or maybe even in the future. And so it can even be remedial tasks. It can be things that you've done 100 times. But we just have this preconceived notion that no matter what undertaking we try to do, it's going to be negative. It's going to make someone unhappy. You just can't win. It's one of those. There's an analogy about playing chess with a chicken that I think is kind of humorous, but it makes sense. You don't play chess with a chicken because the chicken is going to get on the board. He's going to knock all the pieces over and he's going to poop on the board. So who wins, right? You can't play chess with a chicken. I mean, it may sound really stupid, but it's just a great example of what this inner critic is doing. It's like you just can't win. And basically, you're the chicken, okay? No matter what you do, the pieces are going to fall down. You can't win, okay? There's no success at hand. There's no hope at hand. And see, these things are so dangerous. The connotation of our podcast, Dancing with the Darkness, this is what we're talking about. That's that darkness. That darkness is right there. And it's trying to crush you. It's trying to destroy all the good things that are inside of you. It's trying to destroy all of the attaboys. In the automotive business that I've been in for years and years and years, there's always been an expression that 10 attaboys are not good enough to get rid of one oh crap. And that's kind of what's going on inside of us. We can do 10 things right, but the one thing wrong that we do is going to be the only thing that we're hyper vigilant about, the only thing that we are having constant ruminating thoughts about. It's that failure, okay? And then that fear or that manifestation of that failure, it sabotages all of the good things that we do. That's always in the back of our mind. So back to what we said in the beginning, when you get the validation, you get the good job, you get whatever, it doesn't stick. It just doesn't stick because all you're doing is concentrating on, well, yeah, I mean, I did good this time, but man, remember when I screwed up? Man, I just can't get over that. And these people are probably still mad at me, and things like you're at your job and I'm going to get fired, or there's a constant fear all the time because all you can do is think about that one negative experience or that one thing that didn't turn out exactly how it was supposed to. Okay. And I've learned in life, as much as I try to convince myself, and I'm trying to convince you through this podcast, it is an uphill battle to realize that a lot of times when there are failures or there's things that go wrong, it really is having to do with things that you have absolutely no control over. And so, there's these principles out there that a lot of really tough, amazing military leaders have come back, and they're making all of these books. And, one of them is Jocko Willink, a Navy SEAL commander, and he has this whole principle of extreme ownership and all of this stuff. And you know what? Extreme ownership is great. Holding yourself accountable is great. Taking ownership of your mistakes and facing them head on, and all of these things are wonderful principles. But when you try to apply these things sometimes to a person with CPTSD, it's very, very difficult, because we are taking extreme ownership of things that are not ours. We are taking accountability for things that are not ours. Okay. The old expression that we were told, all the way back in basic training, about how, sometimes you need to pick up your battle buddy's rucksack and carry it. Well, the PTSD and CPTSD individual in particular, we're carrying somebody's rucksack all the time. And if you add being an empath into the mix, man, this thing is heavy. This thing gets really, really heavy, because you've got so much crap in there that's yours. And now you're carrying everybody else's stuff too. And so we've got to start learning that the extreme ownership principle and being accountable and radical acceptance and all of these things that are meant to make us resilient and tough, we need to understand that we've got to define that for ourselves. What are we taking extreme ownership of? Okay. And so when we're dealing with this toxic inner critic, he's basically telling us, or she, whatever it is for you, is telling us that we have to take extreme ownership and accountability, and we have to carry the weight of the world. If you've ever seen the image of Atlas, and he's scrunched all down and he's got the whole world on top of his back and he's carrying it, and you can tell just by that image that it's excruciating. Every muscle fiber, every sinew in his body is flexed, and you can just see he's under extreme stress and agony as he's carrying the weight of the world on his back. And so this is what happens to us with CPTSD. And there's a developmental process. We go from being a child and being very, very resilient, because we have all of this room in our brain, all of this neuroplasticity, and we store all of this crap, and we repress all of this crap into the gray matter of our brain. And then we go into life, and we are predisposed to anxiety and depression. We tend, the whole scenario of Project Paladin that I started is about that less than 3% of individuals that are out there doing the high speed, low drag jobs, very dangerous, lots of adrenaline, lots of trauma. And, we are predisposed also to be individuals that are going to be in those careers. And so eventually there's, we talked about this before, using the example of Jesus when he was born. There's no more room in the inn, and everything gets full in here. And then we start having stuff that comes out. It can be emotional flooding. It can be all kinds of nasty things. We talked about how it's like pouring coffee into a cup and then putting cream and sugar in there, and then you keep pouring coffee, but you don't know what's coming out. It could be cream, it could be sugar, it could be coffee, right? We can't control that. And so all of these nasty things start to happen, and then we can get into a very, very emotionally deep depression and hopelessness. And then we know many of us have lost people because we tend to flock together, because we have a trauma bond, and these are the individuals we're going to be around that we trust, are other people that understand what we're dealing with. And oftentimes, unfortunately, the darkness takes the lead in the dance with them, and we lose them. And so that's one of the main reasons of this podcast, is that I don't want any of you that are out there that are watching this to get to that point where darkness is leading the dance. And so by giving you some understanding of what's happening to you, and by helping you understand that you're absolutely not alone, that this is a pretty large percent of the population that has had some form of really bad toxic childhood, and polytrauma on top of that, we can not only survive, okay, for years we've been talking about surviving PTSD, surviving CPTSD. Well, I want you to not only survive, I want you to thrive. And Thriving looks like this. Thriving looks like you always leading the dance with the darkness. It looks like you having your own tools to deploy when you need them, to manage emotional flashbacks, to manage the symptoms of CPTSD. It is you learning how to behave in a intimate relationship and actually have a healthy relationship. And it's about you learning how to trust, maybe for the first time in your life. And it's about surrender. For me, it was about surrender to God first, because God is the only one who knows me, really, really knows me, because he crafted me in the womb. He knows my whole life. He knows everything I've been through. He knows the chemicals in my body, the symptoms of CPTSD. He knows it all. And he is the only thing that is bigger than the trauma in my life, and he's the only thing that's bigger than CPTSD and all of the things that go with it. So if you're going to dance with the darkness, you really need the light on your side. You need the light to be in you, and you need it to be part of you, and you need it to be leading the dance with the darkness, because the light will always win. And so it's not only a matter of faith, but it's also a matter of you learning about yourself and who you are, and how to deploy very effective tools to deal with these emotional flashbacks. And so I'm going to talk about the manifestation of an inner trigger or an inner turmoil, whatever we want to call it, re-experiencing. But I'm going to tell you how that can manifest itself sometimes. It's not always in our face, and it's not always something that we realize. And so a story from my life, a couple days ago, we decided that we were going to take we decided this before, we planned it, but we were going to take a train from where we are, and we were going to go to DC to the zoo. I wish I would have done it a long time ago when the kids were small. Now, one of them has moved out the house and the other two are 17 and 16 years old. But you know what? Hey, we planned a trip. So we start the day off with anxiety because we're running behind. Okay? So we're already starting with that. Oh my God, we're going to miss the train. We get there. We're freaking out because we got to figure the parking out, everything else. Okay, well, the train is delayed. Okay, so you would think that we would calm down. I'll say me in general, calm down. The train's delayed, whatever. But no, now you start to worry about, when are we going to get to DC? When are we going to get to the zoo? Are we going to be able to see everything, right? But I've got all of these other things going on in my head too, because of who I am and because I'm hypervigilant. Because not only am I worried about protecting my family on the train, I know that we're going to ride the metro, right? And so I'm all hypervigilant about the metro and running scenarios through my mind. If this guy does this or this guy does this, this is what I'm going to do. I'm running all these tactical scenarios, all of these scenarios in my mind on how I'm going to protect my family and what I'm going to do. And so I'm preoccupied with all of this. I'm preoccupied with making my son walk at we're sitting there walking in ranger formation going to the metro. I mean, that's just how my head works. I've got everybody kind of distanced out, and I've got my son at the front watching the perimeter up there, and I'm in the rear, and it's like I've got that tactical mindset all the time, and it aggravates the hell out of everybody, but they've gotten used to it. They're like, okay, this is what Dad's going to do, and we just need to do it. And so we get there, and then there's this escalator that looks like it's going straight up to heaven. I mean, the vertical, it's unbelievable. Okay, if you didn't just look straight ahead, it could make you sick or make you fall down the daggone escalator. It was unbelievable. So stressing out about that. Then we get up there, from the metro, and now we've got to figure out how to get to the zoo. We got to walk. So we're all humping it. We're going in freaking, double step trying to get to this zoo. So by the time we get to the zoo, I might as well have run a marathon at this point. Okay. And it's not just the hypervigilance and all of the other physical symptoms. Okay. What I need to realize is that there's the inner critic in there, because the inner critic is saying, you've got to protect your family. You've got to prevent this. You've got to stop this. You've got to, look out for this. And so that fear of failure, okay, that fear of, am I going to show up when I need to? Am I going to do what I need to do? Okay, this is all brewing in me, okay? And so we finally get in there. We start seeing animals. This is one of the amazing things that really God has used to calm me down. I really, really have learned to take notice of his creation and get great solace and peace. And so I'm looking at these animals and just amazing experience. Finally get chilled out. By the time I get chilled out, guess what? It's time to go. And now, what am I worried about? Holy crap, we got to get to the train station in time. Okay, so now I'm stressing about that. So we're double timing it again. We're breaking a sweat getting out of the zoo to get to the metro, to get to the train. Sure enough, we're there 30 minutes early. Okay, and it's real crowded in there, and we know that agoraphobia is a real thing for us. And so this is getting to me. I'm like, I'm going crazy. I'm trying to figure out what gate we're supposed to go into for the train. I finally get us in line for the train, and then by the time we get on the train and we get moving, I just pass out. I have just gotten myself worked up to the point where I pass out. Okay. Now you may think that this is all external. Okay. It sounds like a lot of external triggers or re-experiences, but really the whole time it's an inner trigger, an inner manifestation of me being afraid to fail, me being afraid to do the number one task or the number one thing that I feel obligated to do, which is to be a protector. I am a natural born protector. Even my personality type is called the protector. Okay, it's just who I am. Very, very protective, not just of my family, but I'm protective of anyone that is oppressed or being harmed or being bullied or just super, super hypersensitive to that as a protector. Sometimes it's a good thing, but a lot of times it's not, because the inner critic is just insane. Okay, it is, you never protected yourself, dude. How are you going to protect them, kind of thing. You're worthless, you're this, you're that. Okay, and so sometimes we don't realize how worked up we are. And so I want to explain something, and then I'm going to give you some quick finish up these techniques or these tools. Sometimes it manifests itself in our subconscious, okay? I very rarely dream. When I do dream, guess what? It's not a good dream, okay? To be expected with CPTSD and PTSD, we do have not necessarily always nightmares, but we have unpleasant, stressful manifestations of the triggers and the things that have happened to us during a certain period of time. So sometimes I'll have dreams where it's like multiple stressors that I'm navigating, whether it be having to fight somebody that's trying to hurt my family, or somebody breaking into the house, or God knows what. There's some manifestation of me having this struggle, okay? And really that struggle is within myself. And so it'd been a long time since I had a dream where I woke up screaming. And I literally had one of those dreams. And it sounds silly, but I want to explain it to you. So my dream was, I opened my eyes and Michael Myers was right here in my face. The guy from Halloween, the serial killer. And so that may sound silly or campy, but the thing is, this is very significant, because this is one of the avenues of abuse when I was a kid. It was Michael Myers, and it was the girl from The Exorcist that I was always threatened with. Okay, my mother would psychologically abuse me with, I'm going to get possessed like Reagan, or she's possessed, or basically Michael Myers is around every corner and he's going to kill you at any point. And so I remember my imagination as a kid always imagining Michael Myers is trying to kill me. Okay, so it sounds silly, but the point is, this isn't me being afraid that Michael Myers is in my face, because at this point in my life, I'm going to fight to the death with Michael Myers. I don't give a damn. Okay, I'm just going to throw it out there. At this point in my life, I have no fear of him. he kills me, but I'm not going down easy. I'm going to be like the porcupine we talked about, and he's going to get some freaking quills in his face, if he kills me. I'm just saying. That's where I'm at physically, mentally, spiritually as a human being. But the inner child, the inner part of me that is still wounded, still has that fear. And so the face of Michael Myers was not really Michael Myers in my face. It was a manifestation of all of the fear and all of the inner triggers that I had manifested on myself going on this trip. Okay? And it's compounded. It's not just this trip. It's compounded by other things that are going on in my life that I have no control over. Trouble with my kids, or trouble, in my marriage, or trouble with, dealing with my geriatric father, or dealing with stresses at work that there's nothing I can do about. All of these things compound on us externally, but sometimes the worst enemy is the internal, because we literally manifest based on conditioning and experiences. We manifest our own failure before it even takes place. Okay? And so how do we counteract these things? Okay, so one of the things one of the techniques that I'm going to give you today, I actually had to employ myself, because I literally went, and screamed out loud enough to where people in the house were like, what was that? And then everybody went to bed, of course, but they were like, what the hell was that? It literally was that loud that it woke people up. And so what I had to do is I had to do this technique that I'm going to give you, which is learning to identify the types of triggers that lead to flashbacks. Okay? And so I literally had to use one of the other techniques that we talked about. I had to breathe for a second. I had to ground myself and look around and say, okay, I'm in my bed. I'm in my home. Michael Myers isn't here. Everything is safe. And I'm letting my sympathetic nervous system calm down a little bit, the heart rate and everything else. And then I had to sit there in my bed before I could ever go back to sleep. And I had to understand where this came from and bring some logic and reason to it, to the visceral response, and understand that maybe being around the possibility of unsafe people, places, activities, external things that I had no control over could manifest this inner turmoil of the potential for failure, or the fear for failure, or for all of the derogatory things that were told to me as a child coming to fruition. Literally being worthless and not showing up when I needed to show up. So I had to identify where this was really coming from. And then what I had to do is I had to talk myself through that, and I had to visualize a place of comfort. And so I visualized a place of comfort. And it's basically what we end up really craving, being a child of abandonment or a lack of nurturing. We crave that nurture, right? And so even if it's a matter of us self-comforting, which I do a lot, and holding myself and embracing myself, it was very much like, the baby feels in the womb, feeling that safety and comfort. So I'm talking myself through it. I'm saying, hey, everything went okay. You protected your family. Everything's good. I know you got to go back to work on Monday, but everything's going to be fine there. Everything's going to be fine with your father at the old folks home. I had to just remind myself that my part in all of this, I'm doing the very best that I can. And the external things that I cannot control, I'm just going to have to deal with those. And I'm also going to have to utilize my faith and believe in something that's bigger than what's going on externally. Okay? And so that gives me the peace internally, and I was able to calm down and was able to get back to sleep, and was able to get through the rest of the night with sleep. The second thing I want you to do, which kind of coincides with this, is I want you to really hammer down or drill down on what you're actually flashing back to. Okay? And so what I had to do with the whole Michael Myers thing was I had to understand that I was flashing back to that childlike state where I was helpless and I was terrified. And really, it was of something that wasn't even really tangible, because we know that Michael Myers doesn't exist. It's just a character, okay? But what he did was he was the image for every boogeyman, for every bad person that ever harmed me, and for all of those that could potentially harm me, right? Because I grew up feeling very unsafe, because when the people that God has put in, has your caregivers, okay, the ones that are supposed to nurture and protect and take care of you, when they hurt you this way, it's impossible for you to feel safe anywhere. It's just the way that it is. You grow up never feeling safe anywhere. And so I had to realize where it was coming from and understand that I'm a 50-year-old man. I'm the man of the house. I'm the protector. I don't have to be afraid of these things anymore, because I know deep inside my soul, because I've had to do it before, whether militarily or in other instances, I have shown up. I have fought the enemy. I have been successful with that. And so I need to understand that there is a fortuitousness and a courage and a steadfastness in me that I will face the challenge. And so I needed to remind myself of that, okay? And what am I in control of and what am I not in control of? Okay. And the final thing is, when we're utilizing these tactics, we have a very hard time when we have this inner critic and everything else. We have a very hard time giving ourselves any kind of grace. We don't want to give ourselves any patience. As part of that inner critic and as part of how we grew up, we are harder on ourselves than any human being ever could be. Okay? No matter who ridicules you or who fusses at you or who makes you feel small or makes you feel insignificant, we are harder on ourselves than any individual ever will be. And we need to realize that. And so we have got to give ourselves some grace, and we've got to give ourselves a little bit of patience and understand that this is a slow recovery process, okay? There's too many gurus out there, and there's too many self-help books, and there's too many people out there that are not being honest with us with CPTSD. They make it look easy, but it really isn't. These techniques that I've given you have to be deployed over and over again, because the emotional flashbacks come over and over again. And so it has to become a habitual, instinctual muscle memory function for you to automatically start employing these techniques every single time you have an emotional flashback. And what this does, as slowly we become more confident, slowly we become more bold, and slowly we become more comfortable in our own skin, because we're able to differentiate the truth from what isn't true. And we're also able to understand that we are not that frightened little child anymore, and that we have a lot more power than we thought that we did. So please give yourself some grace. Give yourself some patience. And I know that many of us, maybe we've hit a wall and we've gotten into a place where our relationships are done or suffering. There's mistakes we've made that we're facing consequences of. You know what? We have to take ownership of that part and we have to deal with it. But that doesn't mean that you can't forgive yourself, have some self-compassion, and understand that it's a slow recovery process. But as you recover, you become stronger and stronger and stronger. And then we have this beautiful gift that God gives us, which is to turn our own pain into purpose by helping others that are struggling. And it is an amazing, amazing gift to be able to do that. Because many of us feel that we cannot be redeemed, that we cannot be forgiven. And so if we can give that gift to someone else that God has given us, to know that we are redeemable and that we are forgiven and that we can actually thrive at life and live a life that means something. This is where you can get if you persevere and you use these techniques and you push through, because nothing in your life was for nothing. You were not created for nothing. God doesn't make garbage. You have a purpose, and that means that your life and your pain and whatever you're going through has a purpose for good. As we sign off today, I want to remind you, you're not alone. You can reach out to me anytime through the podcast, through comments, through the channel. You're never alone. Give us some feedback if this video reached you, if this video made you feel a certain way. If you don't talk to me, talk to someone, because if you're feeling something, it's for a reason, and your feelings matter. Until next time, God bless all of you, and be safe, and we care about every single one of you that are out there. Amen.